Obviously have the wheel off, 22 millimeter. If you don't have air tools, make sure you break the lug nuts loose, at least loosen them before you pick it up off the ground. I've got a jack stand under the back axle there, so we're well supported. We're going to pull this caliper. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to break these slide bolts loose. They're 12 millimeter, and I've got 11 millimeter for the banjo bolt. I'm going to break that loose before we pull the caliper. It's just easier when it's held in place. We just want to make sure that we can get this loose without any problem. We'll just break it loose. It's starting to leak already, leak out fluid. So we'll just tighten that back up. That way we know that we're not going to have an issue getting that loose. Break my slide bolts loose here. Down. Find my other one here. Okay. Pull my slide bolts out now. You see these have thread locker on them. Don't look like they've ever been out. They look brand new. Well, the caliper's no good though. Yeah. Interesting. Okay. We're just going to peel this off of here. See if I had to push these pistons back in a little bit, maybe to get it off of here, but no, not in this case. So there are the pistons, and I'll show you what we have here and why I get to replace this caliper. I'll show you even more when we get the rotor off here. Let me get a screwdriver real quick. Get these pads off of here. Should be able to get them out of here, but it's kind of fighting me. All right, we'll take that off first. But before I do any of this, because I'm going to need a new rotor, obviously I'm replacing the caliper, and when I disconnect this, it's going to leak fluid out of there, bleed fluid out. What I want to do is take this, remove this bracket. There's two bolts in the back. I believe it's 18 millimeter. One at the top, one at the bottom. We're going to pull this off, and then I'm going to replace this and put the new caliper in place. Not, just connect the banjo to it with the new washers and everything before I take anything apart, because it's going to leak and it's going to have a tendency to get brake fluid, and I don't want to get on parking brake and things like that. So we're just going to pull this off next. Just try to set this out of the way if I can. Just up in there. And I believe these are 18 millimeter. I have to look, but yeah. I don't have a lot of room to get at them with the gun, so we're just going to do the old hammer trick here. Alright, so you can see this inside pad is completely gone. It's right under the metal backing. There's hardly anything left, but the inside pad, I still got a 1/4 inch. Generally speaking, inside goes bad like that. You see that it's the caliper that's having an issue. The outside was completely gone and the inside wasn't. I'd expect it to be more of a slide pin issue, but I believe this is caliper's just locked up. And I'll show you what the rotor looks like after I switch this caliper. We're just going to set this aside because we're not going to reuse. All right, we have caliper. We're just going to, the mounting bracket, we're just going to set that aside. We're going to break our bleeder screw loose. So I believe it should be 10 millimeter. Yeah, it's 10. In this case, it's a 10. Make sure that that's loose so it can bleed out there. So the banjo bolt, got two washers. Don't lose those washers. It will leak if you don't have them on there. So these are phenolic pistons, plastic, but I do want to grease with brake grease the tabs that ride against the back. Actually, I'm going to grease both sides. Anything that rides against the back of the pads, you want to grease. It keeps the noise down. It keeps them from getting corrosion between the back of the pad and the caliper and causing problems. When you put this banjo bolt in, okay, you have these two washers. I can get it apart here somehow. One's going to stay up with the head of the bolt like that, up there, and then one goes underneath the block when you put it on. It goes so it sandwiches that block like that. That's what you want to do. Just set that aside for a minute. And get my other one ready to go. 10 millimeter, 11 millimeter. I said 10, but it's 11. Just gonna break it loose again. Yeah, tilt you up a little bit. I think I'm cutting you off there. All right, I'm just gonna break this loose. It's gonna leak, no big deal. I just want to do it first so we don't break fluid all over the stuff that's done. These can be a little bit of a pain to get off of this block sometimes. Sometimes they just don't want to come off of there. The washer will kind of crush and not want to free itself up, which it's doing right now. You can see it's picking the block up, and it can be a little difficult sometimes. You just got to fight with it. Get it loose. All right, so there we go. I'm just going to hang that down here for a minute, out of the way. My caliper, drain it out. Set it right there. And here's the bolt. So this is that bottom washer. These can be, they don't like to come off very easily, so you just got to kind of fight with it. I'm going to get a pair of pliers. Okay, let's see if I can get a hold of it again. Try this again. Probably the easiest way to get them off of there is just by doing this, getting a hold of the washer and unscrewing it. Basically, it'll come off. Just hold on to it with a pair of pliers. There it goes. I think it's almost off. I say that now, it's gonna make a liar out of me and give me all kinds of problems. Okay, here's my bottom washer. I'm not reusing this bolt. My new caliper. So, bleeder should always be at the top when it's on the car. So this goes like this. Bleeder's up here. That's how you know if they're not marked. They're usually marked. This one's marked. I saw it earlier. It says right. It says R on it somewhere. I remember seeing it right there. I'm looking right at it. Get my new banjo bolt. Okay. Put my bolt in the block there at the end of the line. Put my washer underneath of it, the other washer, and get it started like that. We'll get it started here. It's pretty fine thread. Don't do that. You just get to do it again if you do that. Alright, let's try that one again. One more time. Washer, banjo bolt. Socket. It's the socket. This just gives me a little more grip to get it started. It's a little slippery with that fluid on it. It should fit right down in there. Probably should have looked at the way it was on there. It's got to go up like that, sideways. So, got it started. Just turn it in. Okay. The bleeder is open at the top here. I'm going to leave it open for a little bit. See if it's going to leak out for me more. see. I don't have a lot of room to set this down. I'll set it back here, I think, on the control arm. I think it'll stay there. Okay. Now we're just going to pull the rotor off. I'm going to spray this down. It's got a lot of brake dust and metal behind it from where the backing of the pad was against the rotor from the bad caliper. So, and you see it's bleeding out here. It started bleeding out, although it's facing down. So I'm pretty sure it still has some air in it. We're just gonna, I'm just gonna tighten that up for now. Okay, just so it doesn't leak. Nothing exciting. All right. Let's see if I can adjust the parking brake to get it off here. Parking brake shoes, it feels like it's pretty tight, so we may have to reach in behind and adjust it to get it loose. We'll see. Just tap it and see if it'll come off. A lot of rust in there. Hanging up on the pads. Might need new backing plates, I'm not sure yet. Hung up pretty good. Knocking stuff all over the place. See if I can not hit that. Coming. There we go. That's like okay. Backing plate doesn't look too good, but let me show you what the rotor looks like. It's all torn up. Hopefully you can see that. With it just scored from going metal to metal because that caliper is bad. Pretty rusted on the inside. Just in pretty bad shape overall. It's actually not too bad. Just look at it, it's a little crusty, but it's all there. Let me spray that down. Get it cleaned off here. It needs new parking brakes. This one's cracked. Look at it separating. So we're going to have to pull that apart too. That one's a little bit shallower here. It is. I hope that just want to get it on there good. I want to strip it. And hopefully it's going to break loose here. I don't have a whole lot of leverage on it. Yeah, looks like it, yeah, it did. Came right out. Not a lot of room in there. There it is. Okay. Set that aside. We're going to need that. Yeah, that's it. That's what's holding it, right? We'll bolt at the top. Push it down. Edge of the hub. Get it off of that way, maybe. Maybe. There it goes. All right. Just got to weasel it around it. So you can see how rusty this is. Pretty nasty. So obviously this, we're gonna have to replace this backing plate, but so I've got this flange that it mounts to loose, but I left one bolt tight and left the other ones in just to hold it in place. And I got to get this parking brake. It's a pain. These have little tabs on the other side. You got to reach down and pull the spring and kind of push those tabs in. They're plastic without breaking them. Then you can pull back on the cable once you get it through there, and then there's a slot on the back side of this where you can pull the cable out and release it. It's a little bit of a pain. I may leave it on here, but I'm probably going to fight with it for a little bit here, trying to get it right. I just know from experience that they're a pain. There it goes. So it moved a little bit. You can see it moved a little bit. So I've got those tabs pushed in. I can pull it. Now, I should be able to just pull this, hold it out here, get my tool out of the way, pull it up, pull it to the back enough, as you can see the cable, get that cable through the slot, and then I can release it. Now it's released. That's one, not too bad. And I can just push it off. So, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see it? Yeah, it's kind of, zoom in if I can. If I can show it to you. Get some light on it would help. So in here, there's little plastic tabs. These little tabs stick out. You got to kind of push them in to release it. It's a pain, but it's not too bad. All right, so now I have parking brake. I'm just going to take these 4 bolts out of this flange. 18 millimeters. I said probably 50 times already, but I have them loose. Like I said, I had them loose already. Just left the one tight so I could get that parking brake cable undone before I pull it apart. This backing plate on this side, this is passenger side, is much worse than the other one. But I broke the bolt off in the other one, and I had to pull the backing plate anyway. Actually, before I take that bolt out, I'm going to do some cleaning. While it's still pretty tight, I'm going to actually get in here with a wire brush, clean it up while it's still tight. Alright, so we've got to get this one piece out, which means we're going to cut this. I'm going to take a cutting wheel. You can take a pair of snips if you don't have a cutting wheel and use that. We're going to cut this off of here. We've got to cut through it. I'm going to come over here where you can't see, but I'm just going to cut through this so I can pull it apart. I'm going to get a pair of gloves on so I don't end up cutting myself. Probably be a good idea. We got a cutoff wheel. If you don't have a cutoff wheel, I am wearing safety glasses and ear protection for this part. Kind of rotate this out of the way and I get this shield where I can cut it and get it apart so I can get it all peeled off of here. Pretty shot. And like I said, normally if you get a one piece, you got to pull the axle to do it. Fortunately, Dorman makes one where you don't have to do that. So I'm going to pull this parking brake adjuster. I'll try to pull it out of here. Looks like it's pretty seized up. Not a big surprise really, considering the fact that it's rusted as bad as it is. Just kind of shock it loose here. I'm sure this parking brake on this side was just not working. Cable's okay. I looked at the cable, but I'm sure that this wasn't working. It should slide right out of there, and it's not liking me right now. Seized up, big time seized up. I'm whacking it pretty good. It's coming though. There it goes. All right. Yeah, see, it's pretty nasty looking. Let's see. Should be able to pull this now. Parking brake pawl, I think. Yeah, there's the pawl. What you want to notice is the hole in this gasket, well, not that big hole, the hole where it's supposed to go through, is offset. And in this case, on the passenger side, it's offset towards the back. And there's a cup that the pin goes in that faces to the back on this side. Well, actually, when it's up here, but it's going to be down here when we're done. It's actually facing to the front, but when we're working on it, just to show it, I'm going to put it up here, basically. It faces towards the non-adjuster side. And we'll wire wheel that, clean it off. You can see there's hardly anything left of this. It's just about gone. Sure, it's letting all kinds of crud and moisture and salt and everything else. Yeah, it's pretty nasty looking. So we're just gonna see if we can drive this out. Yeah, it'll go. It's going. There we go. That's supposed to turn. Kind of seized up. Kind of no good. All right. So now we'll just finish with our cleaning. One of the things you want to do is I'm going to come in here. You want to clean the face, the edge of this flange and the face, and get the corrosion off of there so the new backing plate fits as it should. Otherwise, you'll have a hard time with it. It won't go on there correctly. I'm just knocking some off of the axle here. There's crud off the axle. Sanding it, I'm just kind of scraping it off. Get a little bit clean as it should be. And one of the things I want to do in here is, you see how bound up that was. I have just a brass wire brush here. Just clean this out really good. Stop it. Clean that out really good. Go get my pan. Some more brake clean. And some more brake clean. Alright, I wanted to show you this two-piece backing plate. What you have to do is slide this in, and it locks together like that. You got to kind of weasel it in there. It's this hole here is where the parking brake, where it attaches to the parking brake cable, goes through. You have to kind of feed that in and get it lined up. You don't have a lot of room, but it's doable. It's definitely doable. So this is going to go over here. Like that. I'm probably going to turn this so I can just see it better. So it goes around this, and then it has to fit on that flange. All right, so I've got it on there. It's just you just got to wiggle it around and line it up. It took me 5 minutes or so to get it in the right position, get that parking brake, and then this other piece. You have to kind of do the same thing. You have to hold this, kind of pull it back off of there so you can get it around the flange, and at the same time get those pieces in there. You just gotta mess with it. Right. There we go. All right. Come on, guy. There we go. Oh, 1 for 2. This one came in. There we go. All right. Come on. All right. Get it lined up here. Everybody happy. Good. Well, that's fun. Not really. A little bit of a pain, but better than pulling the axle. Especially when I just did the fluid and all in the rear not very long ago. And what I didn't do, and I should have done, is my new grommet. I need to, it has to go through the backing plate. Now I've got it clipped together. Should have enough play. You can't see this, it's down the bottom. To be able to, this side fits against this flange, the back of this flange, and this actually goes through the backing plate. So I'm going to just put that in place here, I hope, without too much difficulty. I know you can't see it without pulling things apart here. Try. I'm going to spin it. Now I've got it all together and try to weasel it in here. And I can. And it'll go in. Now, the hole needs to be, when it's facing up like this, the hole needs to be towards the back. When it spins around, it's going to end up being towards the front. But for now, when you're putting it in, if you're putting it in up top, that hole needs to be more towards the back. Get this in place here. Don't poke a hole in it. Just kind of weasel it in. Okay. All right. Light on here. There's a little lip, a ridge that it rides in on the on the back of this. I should have shown you that probably, but we're just going to get it in place here. Get it seated, which it is. Get it in the backing plate. Make sure it's lined. There we go. Now there's 2 tabs, one here and one on the other side. You want to bend them over, basically, and holds the backing plate to the flange here. So we're going to do that right now so it can't come undone on us. We're just going to take this and try to take it here. A pair of pliers or a hammer or something. Push that down. That'll hold it. And then there's one on this side down here. 180 degrees from the first. We'll do the same thing. Just push it in. Okay. And that'll stay together. Now, remember I said this little cup in this, when this is up like this, faces towards the back. It'll end up facing towards the front when we're done. But for now, it faces towards the back. But first, I want to fill this with grease. I'm going to put some brake grease inside of this. Get a good amount in there. Just kind of peel some off. Get some more and just jam it in there. You can see how corroded it was before and the fact that it wouldn't move. So we want to pack it in there pretty good. Jam it in there. Get a good amount in there. All right. Good. All right. Gotta put our parking brake pawl back in here. Get it lined up here in that hole and push it through. At least that's the plan. There we go. Come on. It's fighting me a little bit here. There we go. Put that in place. Now we're going to get our rebuild kit here for the parking brake adjuster. Get that back together, grease that up, and don't forget your little pin. So, cup's facing this way, the pin's going to go in this way. What we're going to do, the easiest way to hold that in place is take the little cup it goes in, put some grease in it. Jam some grease down in there. Try not to drop the pin. Stick that pin in there to hold it for you. That just sits in there. I'm going to actually wipe this off a little bit on the outside. Almost dropped that in the pan. I'm just going to wipe this off a little bit on the outside. Don't need it all over. We're really not going to hurt anything, but I'm going to push this into place. It'll go into that little indent in the parking brake pawl. Good. I've got my slots. There's slots on this. They're facing up and down. Little slots. Hopefully you can see that. I hope. Same thing here. We're going to grease it. I'm going to grease it before I screw it together here. Some brake grease. Man, I can't hold anything today. Okay. We're going to screw this all the way in. So it's all the way down in it. Okay, it's all the way in. I'm just going to put that in there. There's plenty of grease in there. I packed it pretty full. Let's see what we got going on here. This is not moving like it should. It should move easier than that. See why. It's got to be able to move. Well, maybe I got too much grease in there, maybe. Get some of that grease out. Maybe I have too much in there. A little too much. Take some out of there. Let's try that again, see if it makes a difference. It did not. I don't think it's the grease. Figure out what's going on here. Why it's giving me a hard time. I just knocked my other side out of there. Alright, let me sit that down and figure out why I'm having a hard time with this one. There we go. That's better. Work it in there a couple times. Alright, so now get your grooves lined up and down where your pads are going to sit. Vertically in this case. Everybody's in and happy. I don't know about happy, but everybody's in. Okay. Now we're going to spin this around and bolt it back in. I've wire wheeled all four of those bolts for this flange as well as the bolts for the caliper mounting bracket. Cleaned them up. I'll re-Loctite them. So now we should just be able to spin this, basically. I just tested it and knocked it right out of there. Now I get to fix it. And my pins. Where's my pin? Still in there? My pin stayed in. I just knocked it out while I was testing the pawl, parking brake pawl. So I get to fix it. Right. We're good. Line everybody up. Spin everybody around where they're supposed to be. Alright. Everybody's lined up. I'm just going to put these four bolts back in. I will Loctite them blue Loctite, not red. Don't use red. You will not be happy if you do that. We're just going to Loctite these and put them back. Don't put it on the very end of the bolt. It sticks through. So put it, half an inch up on the bolt, or something like that, 3/8. I'm going to get them started, and then I'm just going to turn them in, and I'll come back because this is exciting stuff here. This clip goes in here like this. You got to pull this out of here. I'm going to have to pull that out. wiggle it back out and wiggle that out of here. Okay, get that out. Put this on, put that clip in, good. Make sure we push it all the way in here. And then we can put our adjuster on there. Just forgot to do that in the first place. Man, I'm just throwing tools everywhere today. Good time. Good times. Okay. Tap that into place. The plier hammers. Okay. Don't forget to do that. I almost forgot it, but I didn't. Okay. Parking brake. Stamp marking faces out. Got stamped on it. Make sure it's facing out. See if I can not fight with this one for 15 minutes. Gotta remember how I did it on the other side. I fought with it for a while and I kind of figured out what I had to do, but that doesn't mean I'm going to remember what I did on the other side, and I'll probably forget and won't be able to get it. I think I kind of went down here with it and around. I think that's what I did. Let me see here. Yeah, there you go. That's it. So you want to stick that one end down in there and kind of go past, and then otherwise you'll fight with it forever. All right, so we've got to get this in here. So I'm going to line the one you can't see up first. I'm going to get that, try to get that in place. Or maybe not. I'll just put the top one in instead. Yeah, I got the top one in, lined in that slot in that receiver there, and then I'm going to pry this back into place, not crush my fingers, I hope. You should be able to just push on the screwdriver enough to get it to go into the other slot. I hope. That's the plan, at least, without stabbing myself with a screwdriver. Here, I think I actually got it. Alright, so they got to be in that slot. It's in that slot on both sides. Now I have that in place. I want to put this bracket in up here, and so that holds it in place. A little bit of a pain, a little tight, but here's these face towards the middle. Goes in like this, and it actually holds this up against the bracket. So that's what we got to do. Other side, I don't know if I'll show it to you or not, but the bolt snapped off on me taking it out. That was not a lot of fun. I had to drill it out and retap it. Can't say I enjoyed it, but it did get fixed, which is what's important. And I know you can't see anything but my hand, but I'll move in a second here. Alright, I got it started. Alright. Hopefully you can see that. I'm trying to tell what you're saying. I have a real pretty narrow, shallow ratchet. I think I'm able to get in there with it. Yep, barely. Don't snap these off. Just snug them up. I mean, they're tiny little bolt. It's pretty weird that this side, the backing plate and the rust was a lot worse on this side than it was on the other side. But the other side, the bolt broke off. This side, it was fine. A little bit of misalignment there I got to fix. Put that in a second. I just snug this bolt up. I won't crush it. I don't want it to come out, but you know, it's a little tiny bolt. Alright, so pads are on there. So, there is no external adjustment to get at this adjuster. There's no access. So you have to adjust this and get it where you need it to be before you put everything back together. I got a problem that I gotta fix. I'm gonna try to film this for you. Here's the pawl I have to get at. On this side it's a lot easier. The other side is really, it's jammed in there, so it's a little tough to get it in there. But this one, you just want to hook it like that. It's hooked on, so you know the opening faces away from the adjuster. Now this, you've got to pull this back. I forget how I did this on the other side. I think I used my Not my head like that. That hurt. We'll try. I just gotta get a hold of it well and pull back. It's not easy. Try to catch it. Try to catch the spring on the other side of this bracket. Yeah, just cut my finger. And just use that to help you hold it back. And you gotta pull it. You know, see it slip by? It's gotta stay on the other side. I did cut my finger. Yes, I accomplished something. You gotta pull on the cable and get it in there. So pull it through the slot, then you gotta push it back in there and it'll clip into place. Those plastic tabs will hold it, that's it. This side's actually a lot easier than the other side. The other side is just tough because there's a bracket right up against this. It makes it hard to get an initial hook on that. This is the same. Alright, so I've got to adjust the star wheel. I'm moving the pads out right now, so they're going to be tighter to the rotor, the inside of the rotor. We're just going to try it right there. And what I want is, I want it to be pretty tight with a little bit of drag. Just a little bit of drag on the rotor. If you get it too much, you won't be able to slide a rotor on. So these are, they're too loose. They're real loose, so we want to tighten it even more. We want to bring that adjuster out more. Okay, so I got it on there, just a little bit of drag after adjusting it for about 5 minutes back and forth. Alright, so I just got 2 lug nuts on here, just hold in place. I got it where I want it. It's got a little bit of drag on the pads. It's not hitting the backing plate. It's not, you know, hitting anything it shouldn't hit. Now I'm just going to take these off. I want to grease this hub before I put the rotor on. This rotor, since they're coated, it doesn't really matter. But if you have an uncoated rotor, they'll tend to corrode to the hub, and then they're really hard to get off sometimes. So you always grease them. Just put a light coating of high temperature grease on them, on the face of the hub after we cleaned it. And that keeps it from corroding to the hub and causing a problem the next time it has to come apart. I'll just get some. You don't need a lot. I'm just gonna put some on here and then work it around with a brush. Just need a thin coating. Enough. All right. Put the rotor back on. Good. Put a lug nut back on, that's just to hold it in place. And we'll work on getting the caliper, mounting bracket and caliper back in place. Good. My mounting bracket here. Always check it's brand new, obviously, but I want to check the pins to make sure they're greased okay, because sometimes these come and they're not greased like they should be. So we'll just pull the pin out, make sure that it's greased. Actually, I'd like a little more on that one. That one doesn't have very much. That's why you check them. Just put a thin coat on them. Don't need a lot. Too much causes problems. Thin coat, make sure they're engaged. Pull this one out. A little bit more on that one too. Stick that back in. Good. Now we're going to just rehang the bracket, 2 bolts in the back. I said I've wire wheeled these already, and they have thread locker. I put thread locker on them. Blue thread locker, so we're just going to line these back up. I know you can't see it, but it's just a couple bolts. Line it back up and put it in place. Now I almost did the same thing. I did on the other side. When I was doing the other side, I forgot. I've got to grease behind the hardware where the hardware goes and put new hardware on there. I almost forgot again. Take it apart on the other side because I forgot. Just a thin coat. Just trying to keep corrosion out of there. I want to keep the moisture out. Keep the corrosion from getting in there. Just behind where the hardware goes. Big debate all the time, but I'll tell you why I think that's what you should do. You can do what you want, but it's worked very well for me. This is brake grease as well. Okay, then get our hardware. Put our hardware on. Put it into place here. Push it down into place. Alright, so what usually happens with these is, you know, the pads are riding in that groove here. And what happens is if corrosion gets in there, it starts to push up on either side of the hardware, and it pinches the pad, and then the pad can't move back and forth freely. And that's usually what causes problem, premature wear or uneven wear. So you want to grease behind it, keep the moisture out of there, keep the corrosion from starting, and make your pads last longer and make them work better. Okay, they're tight. Rotor and pads. I should probably show you the part numbers. There's the rotors, Wagner's, BD12603. Oh man, can't even speak. BD126032E. I like these rotors. I've said this in my other videos. Don't buy cheap stuff. I like to buy OEM, but I don't. For this stuff, it's just too expensive. But if you buy cheap rotors, you're going to end up doing it more than once. They'll warp on you. I've never had a comeback on these. They've never warped on me. I've had zero issues with them. I've been using them for, oh, 3 or 4 years now. And I've had no problems with them. From multiple sets on the same car, no issues. Pads. These are Wagner OEX 975. Alright, let's put the pads in. Pads are the same inside and outside for this. There's an indicator, squeal indicator on both, so it doesn't really matter. Just do the inside and the outside first. Put that in place. Do the inside. Right in there. Take our slide bolts off. Probably going to have to hold this. It'll probably spin this when you go to put the slide bolts in. You can grab it. Just don't grab the boot. You can grab it with either a wrench or a pair of needle nose vice grips. Doesn't matter. Just don't tear your boots up. So caliper's ready. Got it set up. So these are phenolic. Still grease them. And just for vibration, not for really corrosion, but a little bit of vibration. And then we want to grease these tabs. I can't, not even showing it to you. It's up here out of the picture. We want to grease inside these tabs because it rides on the outside of that, the back of the pad, the outside. So grease the face of these, and you don't need a lot, but you do need to cover them. Some grease on there. Brake grease, of course. Okay. Alright, let's hang our caliper now. Slide it in there, make sure you push your, give you the grief here, there we go. Make sure you don't hit them, make sure you want to push in on them if you need to a little bit, but this style tends to go right in. Bleeders at the top, bleeders up here at the top. If you get it, and the bleeders at the bottom, you got it on the wrong side. That's all. Have to redo it. Okay, 12 millimeter for those slide bolt pins, or slide bolt bolts, I guess. Slide pin bolts, whatever you want to call it. Just tighten them up. Okay, I didn't have to grab that one, good. I didn't have to hold them at all, good. So this should slide freely, right, back and forth, and it does. And that's it. Ready to go. Obviously, we'll put the wheel back on there. And actually, that's not it. calipers. I got to bleed the calipers. All right, so I have somebody helping me. You make sure your reservoir is full. Put the cap back on. They're pumping the brake up. Hold the pedal down. And I've got a hose just to keep it from getting all over everything. And they're holding the pedal down. I'm going to break it loose. It should push fluid out, which it is. I pump it up again. Hold it. Same thing, break the bleeder loose. One more time. Hold it. Okay, that's it. Now I'm going to do the same thing on the driver's side. Make sure that the air's bled out of that. I am going to clean this before I go to the other side. That's pretty much it. Bleed the other side and then you're done. Clean my bleeder off. Clean my hose. Make sure no one's leaking. Let it dry out. And that's it. Make sure you check your reservoir when you're done. Make sure it's full. Put the wheels back on, obviously, and you're good to go. You know, when you take these out, you want to seat these pads. So you're going to drive it up around 50 miles an hour, slow it down to 15. Just mix driving, using the brakes, heating them up, setting the pads, bedding the pads to the rotor. You want to do that before you drive it. Make sure you pump the brakes and the pedal's firm, or you get a scary moment where you don't have any brakes. Well, that's it. Another boring brake video. Here's what's left of the passenger side rear backing plate. Not a whole lot. Pretty bad shape. The two-piece is great when you don't want to have to pull the hub, pull the axle out of the rear. I just did the fluid in that rear probably 10,000 miles ago. I did not want to have to pull the axles out if I didn't have to, which fortunately I didn't. Not a very difficult job, just takes some time. Just takes some time to get through it. It's just basic maintenance. This should be good for whenever those pads wear out. I don't know how long they're going to last, but it should be tens of thousands of miles at least. If you have to do this for your vehicle, I hope it helps you out. If you like the video, subscribe below. Thanks for watching.